Hello, this is the Blast Report podcast on all things blasting. My name is Evan Tebow with New Wave Consulting, and I want to thank all the drill and blast teams along with those supporting them who are out there on the pattern. The production team at Blast Think and I would like to welcome you to today's episode of the Blast Report podcast. Well, Jay, it's nice to have you here on the podcast, and I kind of want to get an idea. What is it, 34 years?
I'm 46 years in the business.
46 years.
5 years at Wampum.
In Wampum. Wow. And so, this name Wampum keeps coming up. I used to work for a powder company, and Wampum, the name would come up, and talking about, a business that is, there's a lot of the big powder companies are running the show, I guess, and yeah. I kind of your guys' name continues to come up, and I wanted to invite you on the show and talk a little bit about what's it like being from your side, and I kind of want to start out. We'll introduce the audience, introduce yourself, and what we've been talking about is the origin story. How did you get into blasting?
Needed a job. Yep, 19 years old and needed a job. So I got out of high school, 1975, graduated on a Friday night. I was on a gas rig drilling for natural gas. Sunday evening, they called it Morning Tower. It was 11 till 7 a.m., 7 days a week for like 6 months straight.
Wow.
And
in Pennsylvania,
and then had to pull a couple doubles probably once a week or twice a week, so 16-hour shifts. Then I got switched over to daylight, and then
which is a nice change.
Yeah, in the May of '76, the gas business took a big downturn, and I got laid off from there. Got a job as a plastering crew. I was 19 years old, and I'd stop at friends of ours had a local gas station, BP gas station. Well, at the time, a company called HL and AG Balsinger just moved in a little town of Plumville, Pennsylvania. And the gentleman that ran the gas station kept telling these guys from Balsinger, "You got to hire this kid. You got to hire this kid." Well, I was only 19 and wasn't able to do anything hazmat-wise. You got to be 21.
Mm-hmm.
So finally in August, they did hire me because they got a new Viking dewatering pickup. And I got to run that dewatering pickup on every wet shop in Pennsylvania they tried to get me to.
That's a lot of holes.
That's a lot of wet, muddy.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And okay, so this is how you kind of started out in the industry,
right?
And just getting your feet wet, literally getting your feet wet, dewatering holes all the time.
Yeah.
And did you immediately take a liking to the blasting industry, or was it kind of like you said, I just kind of needed a job?
Yeah, I needed a job. It was intriguing. The traveling was nice. Every day was something different. So
mm-hmm.
It wasn't you were stuck in one position, one job, doing the same thing repetitiously. So
the rock's always changing, and the customers,
the scenery. And then back then there was a lot of small coal mining going on in Pennsylvania. Small jobs plus big jobs, and after. About 8 months, I was able to get a blaster's license back then, and I passed my test, but I still wasn't 21, so they had to hire somebody to drive the explosive truck, and then I would follow in my dewatering truck.
As the blaster.
Then I was actually a blaster early 77, in the spring of 77.
And so how did that stem into getting your foot in the door with Wampum Hardware, and I guess, can you give me a little bit of history in the evolution of this company and why it's kind of different than what a lot of the industry's direction that the industry has kind of gone into?
So my career was, I had 6 years with HL and AG Ball Singers. A gentleman named Alex Senyals owned it. And we went different directions in the fall of 82. And in January of 83, I started with a company called Angus Chemical. They were based out of Chicago, Illinois, but they had a couple magazine sites in Western PA. And working with them for about a year, they got bought out by Independent Explosives, which at the time was from Scranton, Pennsylvania. So that was in 83, and I worked with them until 88 when they got bought out by Ireco. Ireco and Wampum Hardware established a joint venture in 1987, a 50-50 joint venture. So in 88, when Independent was bought out, Wampum picked up the magazine locations that Independent had in Western PA, so that it fell under their wing. As far as Wampum Hardware has been in business since 1904, and in a little town called Wampum, PA. It's just outside of Newcastle, PA, on the Ohio border. They had a hardware store, and up until the late 50s, like 56, 57, 58, you could actually go into the hardware store and buy your dynamite and your detonators. After that 58 era, they made them move out of town, so they had a farmhouse out and they put magazines up, and that's where their storage became then. And then in the early 60s, they pretty much dropped the hammers and nails and closed the hardware downtown Wampum, PA.
They should open it back up just for...
Yeah. Most of their work and up until the 60s was mine delivery. So there was a lot of underground coal mining and a lot of underground limestone. So it was all delivery. They had their own blasters. Wampum had like 5 employees. And then in the 60s, they started getting into the drilling and blasting, small crews. And it's just rode over time. Jerry Davis is the president of the company. When he was 21 years old, his dad passed away of a sudden heart attack. So he had to grab the bull by the horns, and he's been doing that ever since.
At 21.
Yeah, now he's 81. Doing very, very well.
And yeah, it's very successful.
Comes into the office every day when he's a little bit seasonal in the winter in Florida.
I don't blame him.
Some sunshine, yeah. So it's been a lot of acquisitions. Excuse me. They acquired a lot of other little distributorships throughout Ohio, Michigan. We have a magazine site in Michigan. We have a magazine site in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Couple magazine sites in Ohio, one in Fairmont, West Virginia, and we have 5 operations in Pennsylvania. So we're spread out pretty far.
Yeah, that's and so in your, I know you're very heavily involved in the Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania chapter, right?
Well,
and the conferences that go on up there.
Right. So I was on the board for many, many years with the Penn State Drilling and Blasting Conference. There was about 15 of us from all aspects of the business, regulators and other manufacturers and distributors.
That's how I met you originally, was through that conference, and so when you as being so involved with being a distributor, I think it's kind of a unique perspective. You use product from different companies, and doesn't matter what logo's on that product. So can you kind of speak on that? Is because a lot of people in the industry, you know, they get access to only one type of product, or they're only using one, you know, so there's quite a learning curve and relationships that you have to have with the whole industry, right?
Right. So early on, with our joint venture with Dyno Nobel from Dyno Nobel since 1987, at least 80% of the product we buy has been usually, Dyno Nobel. But if somebody's built a bigger, better mousetrap or whatever, like early on when electronic detonators came out, Dyno wasn't up to speed with electronics, so we tried several products on the market, and we've been doing electronic detonators for 15, 16, 17 years, but they were from other suppliers. Whatever the products are, if our manufacturer can't get them readily available, we go out and do what we have to do.
Was there did you have some like learning curves that you've experienced that you're willing to share with us? I mean,
some people might call those mistakes.
Yeah, mistakes.
Yeah. Way back in the day, before non-Ls came out, Hercules had a product. It was a gas detonator system where you would send gas through tubing, and it was very unique. It was called the Hercudet back then, and myself and a guy named Jeff Zeiler from Pennsylvania, we kind of took the bull by the horns, and we were working exclusively with their research team and trying to make that product work. So some of the failures we've had were on the construction side when you put a meter at the end of your series of caps, and you're looking for a oxygen level that would make sure things fired at the right time. And we're sitting there waiting on the flow, and all of a sudden water came squirting out, which means it killed every detonator that it went through. So we had a real wet shot, and we had a bad connection that was siphoning water, and we had a real mess with that one.
And it pumped water through the entire initiation system.
Well, let's just say a couple rows of initiates. So we ended up firing what we had, what was good, and then we had to sit there and work with the excavator, digging through the muck pile, making sure we retrieved all the product. But,
wow. Was it the front rows?
No, this was a construction job. It was a sewer plant, so it was a situation where you didn't have any relief or anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there was no danger of anything firing.
Yes.
Just had to get it dug up and retrieved. Obviously, the business end of the cap was still hot, but as far as the timing series, it was all inert because of the water.
Wow, I have never even heard of that, or
yeah,
that's
It was you carried a tackle box with all different kind of plastic connections, like you were a plumber. You were a blaster.
Someone did tell me that there's a difference between, working with explosives. There's a lot of risk involved, and people think it's, quite dangerous. And I tell them, well, I'm no electrician. Electricians, that's invisible, and that'll kill you quick. But then someone said the difference between a plumber and an electrician is that when a plumber screws up, he just gets wet. Covered in shit. Right. And so, and so that's funny that you say you just end up walking around the blast pattern with all the plumbing equipment and plumbing tools. Yeah.
Yeah. So we worked in that system a good while. That was in the AG, HL and AG ball singer days. So that was, let's say, an event that people flew in from Hercules across the country trying to figure out what happened. Obviously, it was a human error. Mm-hmm. Everybody blames it on human error, no matter what, usually. So
that is something there is a bit of a stereotype there where the blasters quickly blame the powder companies, and then the powder companies are quick to blame the blasters, and
then unfortunately the driller takes all the blame.
that is true,
Yeah.
that is true. So did you I guess being able to choose different powders, inside of your contract and the way that the company's been built up, it gives you a little freedom to work with what product you need when you need it, right?
Right.
That's something that is there something there that you can speak on there? I mean, that's a really nice benefit, because some people are kind of pigeonholed into only using the product from this one company or something like that, and you get a lot more freedom, I feel like.
Yeah, no, the Davis family at Wampum Hardware has given us the freedom all the time. If there's something better, there's something out there we want to try and experiment with, we're truly not afraid to try anything. We work with Frank Giappetto a lot, Doug Rudenko from Vibratech on some really unusual concepts, and they've turned out very well. And 2 milliseconds between holes, some crazy stuff like that. The fragmentation is incredible, but you've got to have a right situation where you can detonate 2 milliseconds between 70-foot holes, 6.5 inch. Well, we've always been able, even on bidding on jobs, Jerry Davis has always been very open-minded. The farthest west we've gone is Great Falls, Montana. We did a hydroelectric plant there back in like 2010. We spent 9 months there. It was an absolute wonderful project with Walsh Construction out of Chicago. So we were building a new hydroelectric dam on the Missouri River.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
A chance to go see Montana. And
yeah. So I had 4 guys.
Beautiful area.
For 9 months, and they would go back in a heartbeat. So
that's it is okay. So when it comes down to like some of these projects that you've had, have you had a really amazing project that just speaks to you out of your entire career so far, that, if you were to be asked on a podcast what was one of the coolest projects you ever had, is there one that you can think off the top of your head? Sure, it'd be hard to.
No, yeah, that project in Montana is a once in a lifetime event, very nostalgic. We're right up against a existing power plant, hydro power plant that had 8 turbines spinning, and that plant was built in the early 1900s. And actually, Westinghouse had built those turbines for that power plant. So our vibration criteria was extremely low. We were dealing with 0.25 and 0.5 all the time. Overhead power lines. Winter conditions were sometimes extreme. Seen as low as 32 below. Thank God it was on a weekend. On Monday it was only 16 below. Yes, that was definitely a once in a lifetime project. Other projects, my wife will vouch for that.
You're here too, you're part of the interview as well.
Yeah, my wife gets to listen to the phone calls in the evenings, talk about a lot of work job issues.
I bet.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure she could go out and
run a blasting company. Yeah. All the power to you there.
Yeah. So a few years before the Montana job, we had a job in Chicago for Walsh on the 294 toll road going around there, and we had a job at the Raleigh-Durham International Airport. I would fly out on Wednesday morning and go to Raleigh, and Friday afternoon I would fly from Raleigh to Chicago. Because of all the traffic, we could only blast on Saturdays and Sundays. So I would have crew show up Friday night. We'd blast and it was all stick powder for the job. You weren't allowed to have anything pourable. So we'd do 600 cases on Saturday, and we try to get 400 cases done on Sunday, and then we would all go to the airport, fly back home on Monday. I would get home, get some clothes washed, and mow my grass, and leave again on Wednesday, and that went on for like 7 weeks between those two jobs. And at one time, I told the wife, if I ever did anything out of the state, smack me in the head. Well, then, like the next year, we got the job in Montana.
Did you get hit in the back of the head, or did you get to go visit Montana as well?
I don't remember, but it's not that it happens very often.
So the reason you weren't allowed to have any pourable explosives, was that because of just security on the site that you were at? They wanted to make sure they could inventory everything, or?
That was the spec. The rock in that area was pretty porous, and it was pretty relatively soft, but it needed blasted. But you needed to know exactly how many pounds you had in each hole. Mm-hmm. And that was the exact same way on that Montana job. There was no pumpables or no portable products. So the Chicago job was just 600 cases every weekend on Saturday, 400 on Sunday, and Dyno didn't have product in the area at the time, and we bought our product off of Austin Power, and they came out of Kankakee, Illinois. Their magazine location there, delivered to us Saturdays and Sundays only, and then the drillers would stay and drill during the week. So we had a lot of holes by the time Saturday and Sunday got there.
I bet. Now, would you say, so being the independent distributor and everything, is there any, I don't know, final advice, you've think you could provide after your career in the industry? Is there something that you've seen and you've noticed, and you want to, you're given a platform, here's a microphone, is there something that you wish you could help people out, that I wish I knew this, well, back when I was younger, or something like that?
Well, I truly wish we'd had the digital detonators, going from sequential blasting machines. That's what I was weaned on. It was all sequential timer boards. You're running out wire, which some guys love because they pick all the wire up, spend the weekend burning the wire off.
Recycling.
Yeah, recycling, getting pop money or whatever. And, but the technology is extremely exciting right now. I wish I had some of this technology back in the day.
So taking advantage of this new technology, and not being closed off to all the new things that are coming out.
Eyes wide open. Keep your eyes wide open, and don't be afraid to try anything. You need a good background in it. So we have a lot of guys that come to the ISE. The Davises are very good about getting young blasters out and letting them mix with the crowd, all the vendors. And I tell the guys before they get here, just make sure that there's people selling all kind of stuff. And I tell them, make sure they've got dirt in their boots. If they've not been out in the field, you've got to be a little leery what they're selling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything is software based now, but in our world, the software side is fine, but we still got to get in the mud and get the holes loaded. So if some guy's trying to sell you something and his shoes have never been dirty, I'd be leery.
Absolutely.
That's what I tell them.
Well, thank you very much for coming on and doing the show with us. I really appreciate you, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you at the next conference in Pennsylvania. And I think it's really admirable that you guys do bring, would you say you had 60 people out for dinner tonight is what you guys are doing? I mean, it's nice to bring that level of people here and not hide your employees, let them go out, learn, meet people, and they'll be proud to come and go back and work with Wampum. It's a point of pride. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there trying to hire them out from under you, and they're walking around with, proud of who they're with. So
right, and their wives get to come, so it's a treat because we run them hard during the summer. So January, February at the IEC is always a nice little break, and it's nice how the ISE moves around the country.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it more accessible for some. So.
Well, thank you very much, and be safe. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Blast Report podcast. I want to thank the team at Blast Think for producing this show, and please follow along for more episodes in the future, and share this podcast with your colleagues so we can continue to honor our industry and the people in it. Be safe and have a blast.